Okay, today we're going to talk about two classic Black Sabbath albums from 1981 and 1982. We're talking about Mob Rules and Live Evil. Now let's go into a bit of the backstory of what the band is at this point. Most people would know Black Sabbath as being fronted by Ozzy Osbourne. Now, there have been many lead singers for Black Sabbath over the decades, and Ozzy was just the main guy. Back in the late 70s, things started getting a little bit wrong for Ozzy, a little bit difficult, so Ozzy had left the band. Enter Ronnie James Dio. Now, Ronnie James Dio at the time was still relatively new on the block. He had his own bands, and he was definitely much more of a powerhouse singer than what Ozzy was. Ronnie's contribution to the band just rejuvenated them. They were reborn to some degree. 1980s Heaven and Hell was very successful and is an all-time classic album. I don't even need to review the album, check it out. You just can't be disappointed by it if you like heavy metal, hard rock, rock. Again, the broad genre umbrella rears its head. Just an A+ sort of an album. Fast forward 1 year, 1981, Mob Rules. A very successful album, a very powerful album. Mob Rules was recorded in Los Angeles, California, and goes for about 40 minutes. I don't like it as much as Heaven and Hell. I think because the vibe is slightly different. At that point, Bill Ward had left the band, Bill Ward being the drummer, and they recruited Vinny Appice. Again, Vinny Appice was going to have a long relationship with Ronnie James Dio after Dio had made his own band, Dio. Vinny Appice being the brother of Carmine Appice. Yes, Appice and Appice. Brothers, same name, different pronunciation, long story. So this was Ronnie's last studio album with the band, up until 1992's Dehumanizer album. Again, a long sort of story goes on between there. We won't get into that. We just want to talk about the albums. So let's talk straight away about the album cover. Now, you look at the album cover, it's by artist Greg Hildebrandt. Greg Hildebrandt is a very popular artist. Again, his name is very well known in the comic book community, trading cards, things of that nature. And the picture is a modified version of a 1971 piece that he did. I think it was called Dream 1 Crucifiers. Now, some fans claim this. If you have a look at the bottom corner of the album, it kind of says, "Kill Ozzy." Now, that's never been confirmed. You have a look at it. Now, back in the day, the Ozzy Osbourne camp and the Black Sabbath camp had little grudges and little pokes and little things that were going on behind the scenes. This was something else that was evident in 1983's Born Again album cover, which we'll get into at another time. There was a lot of puppetry going on behind the scenes, sabotage things here and there. I mean, even when Dio went off with his own solo band, there were little pokes at Ozzy here, and Ozzy had little pokes at Ronnie. Yeah, it was quite funny. When Tony Iommi, the main man of Black Sabbath, was asked about the Kill Ozzy bit on the album cover, he says that it was rubbish and it's just something the fans made up. And maybe it is, maybe it isn't, who knows, but it's fun. Now, when Mob Rules was released, it was released to mixed reviews. I think I can recall the first time that I listened to the album start to finish. I thought that it had a very different vibe to Heaven and Hell. And I don't think it was because of the replacement of Bill Ward on the drums. Obviously it was something that was going on in the band. The album starts out very strong with Turn Up the Night, very fast-paced, rocking sort of a song. And then it's after that song that things kind of get slow. Now, with Black Sabbath, you've either got a fast-paced song or a slow song. And that's cool. Sometimes you need those slow songs, sometimes you need the fast-paced songs. And I generally enjoy the faster-paced songs. When an album becomes saturated with one kind, it sort of fades away, so to speak. The second song, Voodoo, kind of goes off into its own groove. It lets down a little bit from the opening track. And then into The Sign of the Southern Cross. Really good song, really good. But at this point, I think the track order could have done with bit of mixing up. Sign of the Southern Cross goes into E5150. I think I've remembered that correctly. It's supposed to be the police code for insanity or evil or something like that. And it's an instrumental, it's a very creepy sort of an instrumental, and it leads into the next song, which is Mob Rules. And they fit perfectly together. Again, the album at this point goes into its high point, goes into its fast pace again, which is great. Seemed a little bit stretched out, but we're back there again. Just when you're all hyped up with Mob Rules, it goes into Country Girl. Now, this is a good song as well, but again, I don't feel that they fit together all that well. It's from here out, slipping away and Falling Off the Edge of the World, and Over and Over. These songs are fantastic, but it seems like they got stuck in that slower sort of groove towards the end of the album, which is where it kind of gets a little bit sleepy in terms of having really rocking tracks like Turn Up the Night, and it detracted a little bit for me. Now, that's not to say that the album isn't, again, an A+ sort of an album, because it is. It's an absolute classic. And when you examine each of these songs individually on their own, I really can't fault any of these songs. It's just the order of the tracks that gets to me with this album. And that's cool. Some people love it, some people kind of pass on it because of that. I don't know if you remember back in the 80s, there was this animated full-length movie called Heavy Metal, and they had a song from this album on there, Mob Rules. But it was a different mix of the song, which was quite interesting. So if you ever get to check that out, check that out. So of course the band consisted of Ronnie James Dio on vocals, Geezer Butler on bass, Tony Iommi on guitar, and new guy Vinny Appice on the drums. He wasn't really the new guy, he had replaced Bill Ward during the last tour. And let's not forget Jeff Nichols on keyboard. So here we go, Black Sabbath with Ronnie James Dio at the helm. The band was stronger than ever. They looked unstoppable. Unfortunately, little things started going on in the band. Live Evil was released in 1982. It was the band's first official live album. Although there was an Aussie live album that was released previous to that, this was the first official one. In 1982, Black Sabbath had a publishing deal which was expiring with their management. So by re-recording several songs from their entire catalogue, lots of people were going to get royalties. And it was going to be in the form of this live album. So Live Evil was recorded during the previous tour for Mob Rules, again consisting of the same lineup of the band. The album consists of recordings from several different shows, so it's not one show in particular that you're listening to. It's about 83 minutes, 84 minutes, so it's a good solid live album. You know, the band was on top of the world. When you've got that many talented guys in one band, you start getting a bit of tension. And the key word here is mixing. Ronnie James Dio and Vinny Appice had both gotten up and quit the band midway through the mixing of this album. They went off and created Dio, which led to many years of success in their own right. So because of Ronnie's perfectionist sort of attitude, he started getting called names by people in the Black Sabbath camp. And there was a lot of this going on. Ronnie Dio and Vinny Appice were very clean sort of guys, where Geezer Butler and Tony Iommi were very much into cocaine and stuff like that. So straight away, when this sort of thing happens, you get two separated camps. And again, different points of views, different opinions. This has happened in numerous bands where you get the clean guys and the not so clean guys, and tension begins. So there was the controversy here of the album mixing. Now apparently both camps kind of blamed each other here. Tony and Geezer claimed that Ronnie and Vinny were sneaking in and raising the levels of their parts on the album. Ronnie and Vinny say the same for the other two. So it's he said, no, he said this, no, he said that. In the end, when egos clash this way, there's not a lot you can do before the train derails. And it was a real shame, because this was a real powerhouse of a band. So it wouldn't be until 1992 before this lineup of the band would be back together again for Dehumanizer. Sadly, the cracks started again, and that was the last of their reunion. Their next reunion would be a lot further down the line with Heaven and Hell. So back to Live Evil. It was a very successful album. It's a great album. It's got a nice mix of Ozzy Osbourne era songs and Ronnie James Dio era songs. So nobody kind of feels neglected here. It's a very even sounding album. Great track listing, great lineup of the band. It's just a shame what was happening behind the scenes there towards the end. I highly recommend Live Evil. I highly recommend Mob Rules as well. Check them both out because they're classic albums. Again, controversy side, some people that are strictly Ozzy Osbourne fans for Sabbath, and then there's some people that are strictly Ronnie James Dio fans. They're both good. Why can't we have both? Does that taco commercial say, why can't we have both? Definitely two killer albums, check them out.